Welcome to day 34 of my 3D tutorials. First of all, we're going to do some housekeeping. If you join me this far into the tutorial series, please refer to my website www.andrewbooth3d.com. Today I've updated my website a lot. I've included a new asset, my scene area, to the scene. I will also add in time the actual breakdown, the map breakdowns. I'll add it along as an extra panel here. So if you're interested in see what that looks like, please hold on, because it will be updated. Also, if you want to contact me, if you require a 3D artist for your studio, or if you require advice or critique, please contact me on my email address a.booth3d@outlook.com, or you can always contact me on Twitter @andrewbooth3d. I've also done graphics, but I haven't updated that yet. I also done some concepts, well, grey scale concepts. I always do grey valued concepts. It gives me a good understanding on how the scene actually works and how environment works in the grayscale. That's where I like working in this kind of grayscale setting in Maya, because then I can understand the values of where placement needs to be, more like a level design in a way. So last time we was looking into advanced techniques on UV mapping. I was showing you the bonus tools, the UV UV mapping using the bonus tool and the actual auto unwrap tool. It didn't work the last time, but I don't use it all the time, only when I know I've got a lot of assets to unwrap. So now I'm going to update you on the scene, what I've done. Last time I was stuck bulking out my pool table, and this is what I have so far. This is what I've done today as an extra with my website updates. It still the topology needs to be sorted out a little, and more detail needs to add. It's very low poly. Now, as you can see, I haven't got none of my details what I normally have here. It's always good to show this, because then you know how much polys you used. To get that display up, go to display, display up, display, heads up display, and then poly count, and there you have it. So as you see, this poly here, we actually go by tries, it's 188 in comparison to the food mixer. 1/2 is 357, where the top half is 1200. Old school topology used to be lower than that. It used to be less than 1,000. But since then, because we now work on more powerful engine, more powerful memory, the new standard has become more like 1,000 per asset. That's what I've been doing through research. So today we're going to be actually UV mapping it properly. Yesterday I only started doing it because there's a lot to discuss about. So when we open the UV editor, if I turn all the settings, oh, now that works. Beforehand that didn't work, as you saw last time. That was when it was see-through and it was very buggy. Obviously now it works. Now it proves that it was a bug. Another thing to consider, what I'm now going to show you before I UV map this, I will show you efficiency in materials. Go to get to your material editor, go to Windows, under rendering editor, Hypershader. If you give it a sec, it will load up. It takes a little time. Here we are. Your Hypershade window will open up. This contains all the materials you have used in the scene. Now, what I like to do time to time, because as you saw in previous videos, I've been just right clicking on the object and assign favorite material or assign new material. I haven't been doing it here. You can do it here. This is the more advanced window, so it has more of the settings. Beforehand you don't. The way I've been doing it is the shortcut. But the trouble is, this can get clunked up with materials you're not even using. You can forget about materials or reassign materials and you get things left over. So the best thing I like to do is select them all, edit and delete unused nodes. And as you see, it deletes all the nodes that's not been used. Comput. It clears all that cache, clears all that memory, and it makes it easier to work with. Now, as I said last time, what we're going to do is a lot more advanced, so bear this in mind. Last time I stopped it halfway through the UV editing, UV mapping this actual half model here. The reason I stopped halfway is because it's going to be more advanced. Now, things are going to be more advanced, so what we're going to do, this one is not so bad because it's small, it's dandy, it's easy to unwrap. As you can see, it's almost done here. As you saw before, once if your view has been knocked out of the rotation and it plays up in your view, just press F on your keyboard and it zooms into to your selection, and then it knocks it back into rotation, as you can see. So tools, for this one I'm going to go tools, smooth UVs, relax, and then unfold. That's better to see. This tool here, the checkered one that came packed, it's useful on the model, but when you actually hear, it's not so useful. As you can see, it's too cloudy, you know, it's too whitewashed and it interferes with the scene. You can do it like that. It makes it easier to see. I'm going to leave it like that. So now that is UV mapped perfectly. And as you can see, it follows the lines, the contour of the model. And that's what you're after. This bit here, this needs to be straight. To straighten up, click this button. Basically, this button here aligns all the UVs in a straight line across the axis in that direction, like so. Because we have that selected, we can then select the rest and unfold it like so. And that's what we're going to do with the rest. We know first of all, we're going to rotate this. There is a reason to it. You see, this here is this part here. It's this part here. We know that this is a flat surface. It's flat. It has to be flat. So what we can do, we are going to select all these borders, these UVs, and straighten them up. The reason we're doing it on here is because we're going to use this as a constraint, because we know in the UV space that this is a flat edge. It's flat. It's perfect. Because it's flat, it's basically going to be flat in UV space. So everything around it has to be flat. Same along here. We know that this is a flat surface. So we can then select these and pull it to a flat surface. So now we got this kind of shit going on, right? So we take these UVs here and here, use them as a constraint, click and drag and select all the other UVs, and what will happen, it will deselect these UVs along this edge here where we selected beforehand. This is a good principle to understand, because now if we use this smooth UV tool here, what would happen, because these are deselected, these won't be affected, these won't be smoothed out, so we'll act like a constraint. So now we can then unfold, relax, and unfold using those edges as a constraint. And as you can see, we're getting a better, an even better UVs. And it's the same with this principle here. We know that is a flat surface, so we can just straighten up. With that clicked, with these clicked, we can click and drag the rest of the UV shell and unwrap it. Relax and unfold. Also, we know that this here is a flat surface. As you can see, what's happening, this too is supposed to be a flat surface from this point on, here, 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 and here. It's going to be more of a flat surface, like so, because it's dragged onto this point here. Bearing that in mind, now we can select these edges here and deselect the rest. Actually, I will take them as well. And look what's happening. It's unwrapping the UVs even further. And now we're getting an even better fold because we got this area in constraint. And what's happening, because this bit is meant to be the same flatness as this, so we can do the same principle to this edge to here as we did here, like so. so we can just unfold, relax, and unfold. And look how neat and tidy that UV has become. Now I will say this here. In places like here, you will get some distortion. Now, we can do this in either two ways to fix it. We could cut it along this line here, or this line here. But the thing you gotta consider, like I said in the previous video, you will get stretch and you will have some kind of deformity. No matter how good of an artist, no matter how good as a 3D artist, no matter how good your UVs are, there will be some kind of deformity. But the skill is to control that deformity. Controlling how it flows and how you control it. As you can see, I'm controlling my deformity. The idea is to reduce that to the minimal, so it's barely noticeable. Here will not matter. I mean, we could unfold here and fold along that line like so, and it makes it more better. Like I say, bearing in mind, no matter what you do, you will have some kind of deformity. So now we've got the basic shape done. Let's unfold the whole thing together, so it got a more of a natural flow to it. As you can see, I still don't like this, the way it's transitioning there, because again that is a flat edge, so we lost its constraint there. So just regain it. Same along this edge here. And along this edge here. Now, having these selected, we can do one final smooth, because now we've got the edge here constrained. We just want to sort out the edge loops, the UV edge loops around the main island, like so. As you can see, it's flown quite nicely. Now, one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pull this down. As you can see, we've got, it goes inwards then outwards like that. Just pull it out using the move tool so it meets. Pull this in like so. Having these selected, one tool, I pressed G and it, it be the last tool. I thought it was my smooth, but it's not. As we know, this is a straight line, so we can in effect straighten out. The rest we can't. So now that is a really good UV mapping. I kind of like that UV. So now we've got that, the principle of that sorted. We're now going to do this section here. This shell here. Now we're going to be using the same principle, but slightly different. We'll be using the same principle that we did with the cylinder. I know you're going to say it's more of a rectangle, but in a sense, because of the second half, it is more of a cylinder than it is a square. So, bear that in mind. I'm going to press edge. As you can see, when I try selecting the edge, the whole model is selected. It's because we have this tool selected. To deselect this tool here, just press W for the move tool. Nothing will happen, but now we can individually select the UVs. So go along the edge, push it downwards. As this is the highest point here, there's no point going downwards because it will go in itself. So go upwards. And do all the edges the same principle. Like so. Like that. You probably think, why are we doing that? We're making it worse. Well, we are making it worse, but there is a technique I use on cylinders, advanced cylinders, and I'm now going to do that technique. So now we have basically a square rectangular shape. So now I will select all the UVs vertically, leaving these vertical these UVs at an accurate constraint. Then under polygons we have the unfold tool. Instead of selecting it, you go into the actual menu section here. Now I did this the last time, if I remember rightly, but this is a little recap. Using the legacy, pin UVs, pin unselected. So basically we're using these unselected UVs as a constraint, and we're going to do it along the horizontal. Constraint along the horizontal, meaning that it will go unfold on the horizontal way, if I remember rightly. It could be that it's vertical, so bear in mind. And then apply. There you go. As it done, it redistributed all of the UVs evenly across the horizontal line based off the shell of the UVs. But because we constrained these edges, they don't move. We do the same vertically, and now as you can see, we got a reasonably good UV mapped object here. But the trouble is, it's not realistic. It's too boxy. As you can see, it's in a box. It's too boxy. But as its shape suggests, it's not. So from here, we're going to use the smooth tool to do a final smooth. Like so. Having this selected here and here, because we know that this edge here and this edge here is flat, it's straight. So using it as a constraint, unwrap and relax and unwrap these UVs until you cannot do it anymore. So now it's UV'd mapped. But the trouble we have in here is it's create a deformity here. So always constraint when it's needed. This bottom bit is not needed because it has to have a natural flow to it. But we know that's more or less a flat edge there. So we don't do it again, like so. AR. Actually, to be fair, it does resemble more of a box. So yeah, it looks better with the constraints, to be fair. With an object like this, you're always going to have some kind of deformity, especially top here. So again, like I said, control that deformity. As you can see, this is the best UV layout, not layout, UV unwrap I had out of this object. You either have it like this, more boxy, or if I unwrap the UVs, like so, have it more like that. But then it's pulling along the UVs, creating it's creating a deformity much worse along this edge here. And along here it's pulling it downwards. And I don't like how that transitioning. So it's a trade-off. It depends on how you want it, basically. You can individually unwrap the UVs like so. And it will take it individually. You can do. And it will have more of a natural flow, I suppose. It depends what you're after as your final goal. As you can see, if you do it too much, it'll deform it too much. Now another way we could do it is cut along this line here. Actually, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try it out, see how it looks. Like so, and then cut it. By cutting it, what I can do then I can then use the smooth tool and smooth it out. Of course, because of that edge is flat, we can then, as you see, it makes it even better result. With the top constraint. might make it worse. You don't want to overdo it because it can make it a lot worse. See, this is not too bad, but the problem is this bit here. I mean, you could select it and then put it back in its place and just unwrap the UVs that way. But as you can see, it's distorting it even more. Like I said, it's controlling that distortion. So it's better that way, I think. That's my personal opinion. There's distortion here, but it's controlled. One thing I will do is this part. Put it in slightly. Like so. And this one I'm going to pull downwards slightly. And then start pulling out the UVs so it resemble more of a cube shape. In more of a squared shape. That's better. We have got deformity around here, but I personally don't think that really matters. Once we got texture on it, you won't see this deformity. It's just, it looks worse than what it is. I like that. So now we got this selected. Time to do the layout. So polygons, layout. We're going to have this as a 2K map and apply. This is a good starting point for UV mapping. But as you can see, this shape, it's too bad to control when it comes to texturing, because it's too massive. Even if we size it to place, look, all this texture space that is wasted. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this along this line here. By cutting along this line here, I can now use this. I can now lay this UV layout even better than it was. Rotate it to fit into place, like so. And there you are. We've got a good texture UV layout. I always put it to the top corner here, so when I can then select all of the shells and then increase the resolution, like so. We've got some wastage here, but it's not as worse as it would have been. Arguably, I can change it around again. I'm going to put it here. Move this about like so and find a good configuration. But I think this is a good layout. It's using the maximum space there is. Also, when you UV map them, always leave an edge. Let's say when you zoom into this kind of quality, always make sure it's like 10 centimeters on the ruler, you know, a centimeter away, edge line, I must say, sorry. If you zoomed in like here, then it would be like 10 centimeters, but make sure it's proportionate, you know, it's got a good space towards it. The reason I say that is because by having that edge there, space there, right around the texture space, is to avoid bleeding, texture bleeding. Sometimes on models you can have texture bleeding. This is where the texture bleeds between the shells, so this shell here bleeds until here in between, and because all the UV squares, because these are UV squares, when there's just the one, like here, I do apologise, take that back, I'm trying to think there. Yeah, if even though you have this squared here, this texture space has the same texture as this square here, which means it's repeated. That's how tiling works. So if you have, you know, UVs over this line, you could get like a tile effect here, and it causes like a bleed. So do take care. So this is now UV mapped, and it's really good. Now this is where magic will begin. The next space is where magic will begin. Before I don't do anything, I'm going to save it before I lose my work. As you can see, it's starting to lag. I was scared that it will freeze and crash on me. If it did, I'll show you a different how to revive that information, that scene. So now, what we're going to do, we're going to combine it. So have both sides of the model selected. As you can see, we've got a little distortion here. It's to do with this line here. It's to do with this part here. Because it's flat and it's not flat here, it's transitioning that. That's why it's not flat here. This edge loop, this edge here. So do take care. In fact, looking at it, they're all flat along that edge, so it makes sense to flatten it all out like so. I remember flattening it all out using a similar technique and building it. And because this is near the center, this is too deformed along here as well. So align it up. So now what's happening, we just need to pull it up like so, so they look more like squares. As an artist, you're always going to be tweaking, editing, going back on your work. Always. You're never going to stop, trust me. Sometimes it can be a curse. But it's something you cannot help, because you see something and then it's either been knocked out or it doesn't look the way you want it to look, and then you just work back into it. Yeah, that's better. Pardon me. I had some Coke, so I just burped. I do apologise. They are much better UV. So now, as you can see, it's a much better UV mapping. Well, as you can see, it's different resolution here on the builder. Now you can, there's two ways you can go about it. You could not worry about it because the top here needs to be altered. As you can see, I just seen they're too dragged up a bit, so need to put that. Pull them down. So now what I'm going to do, as you can see, these squares are a bit too big compared to the base. Now you've got two options. Bearing in mind the top bit, they are more smaller because it's going down. As it's going down, it uses more texture space, so it's gotten bigger at the bottom. Now bearing in mind, because these are too small, we can either reduce it to match these small squares with these here, or increase it to lower the resolution, higher the resolution here to match it. So we can either make it bigger or smaller. So now it depends on what you're after. Now it's similar size. We could do that, or we can select more and redo the polygon layout. Better if we do it by the menu. And apply. There you go. as you can see, it done the same thing. It's because this resolution here is same as here, down here, but because the shape of it, naturally enough, that's supposed to come out like a comb. But because I didn't want that way, I want it to be perfect along this edge here. We're going to have that, so it's like a trade-off of this constraint. So now we know that it's in perfect resolution. Redo the layout again to maximize the size. Like so. Perfect. We're going to, by nature, as you can see, there's a little distortion around here and here. We're going to get that because of the flow of it. I mean, we can increase it, I suppose. By clicking on these. And pulling it outward, like so. But then it knocks this bit out. So it's a little trade-off you got to make. Like I said, it's not about the deformity. It's not about how bad the deform, how bad the UV deforms is, and how it's about controlling it where you want it, because you can't completely eliminate it. Another thing I use to check it, the distortion, using this tool here. This shows the maximum distortion. As you can see here, this area here has a lot of distortion. You can edit it so it takes out. The red shows where it's stretching, and the blue means the opposite direction. You mean it's too squashed. According to this, these supposed to be dragged in. Inwards slightly, but as you can see, only distortion there is bad distortion is along this edge here. But we was going to get that anyway. Like I say, it's about controlling it. You cannot completely take it away. Not completely. You can't take away the distortion. You can control it. So areas like here, it's not going to be noticeable really, because the food mixer bowl here is here. The rest is perfect, as you can see, but it's just this area here. Like I said, as I just said before, it doesn't really matter on that proportions because the bowl's there. So now we've got the UVs perfect and how I wanted it. This is how the check pan, we'll upload the check pan looks like. It looked really good. Enough standard that I like. Like I say, ignore the distortion, but a lot of that will be taken away with the texture. So now we're going to select both objects, mesh, combine. So now both are the same object. But now you're probably thinking, okay, so I don't need to worry about anything. Yes, you do. Although you combined it, and they both officially are two, is one object. Unofficially, they're not. Because when I go into vertex mode, look, you have a big hole. That's because both of these edges that were two separate objects are not merged together. They might be combined as an object, but they are not, and I repeat, they are not merged. So the best way to do this, you've got two techniques you can do this. You can go along and then go to edge and select all the edge loop here and then just deselect that way. Or an alternative route is to select the UVs along this edge here all the UVs along this edge, no, not that edge, this edge here, all the UVs along this edge and this edge here and this edge here. So now we have all that middle edge loop UV selected. Go to select, convert selection to edge. Actually no, convert it to vertex. What happened there is because we clicked on convert to edge, what converted all the edges along the UVs, and then we converted to vertex and it didn't select the edge loop we wanted. So convert selection to vertex, and it's now selected every vertex on the center line. With that selected, go to mesh tools, or is it edit mesh? I've got to find it now. Still not used to the new layout. There it is. It's edit mesh and merge. And we merged it. If you want to know how much, if it's all correct, undo it. Look on the display. This is why I told you to enable the actual display of your poly count, because here you have, it tells you how many verts. Since we selected every vert on the middle edge loop, it has 62 verts. Now, to know that we have successfully merged it is by cutting that number in half, so that'd be 31. So when we go edit mesh merge 31, so now we know that all these verts are correctly are now correct. So from this point on, I can see there's no texture. The checker that I had is gone. That's because we literally created a new, we used the Lambert 1 to merge it. So now, since it was already created, the UV, go down to locate it. No, that's not the one. This is always good to have a good naming convention. And it just stops all this. Yeah. This is why I said to you, always keep a good practice on naming convention. And all you do is retweak the verts accordingly. Like so. What's happening here It's because I strained all the UVs here, and now because I'm straightening the UVs, the actual ferrets, it straightened out the UVs. A clever way of doing it. With here, I'm going to pull you out, like so. Pull you out slightly, so you go on the point. Perfect. Now, as you can see, we've got a little deformity, you know, distortion here. Not why that's natural. You always will have, you know, distortion here and there. But so now we have a perfectly good UV map base. Like so. And the best thing about it is, if you look, we only got half of the UV mapped already. If you take the shell, one of the shells, and pull it out, you can see it's the same UV shell from this side. What's happened here? Why is it red? Well, that's because the UV normals is backwards. It's back to front. Because, reason being it's back to front, it's because we literally flicked the poly. When we went to duplicate special, we flipped it on a certain axis. I can't remember which one it was now, but because we flipped it on a certain axis, it flipped the normals. And this is why I said to UV map it why it was two separate instances, because it's an instant that we'll combine it together, because the instance had the same value UV data of the second. It basically created an overlapping of the UV islands. Now, as industry standard, you do not have overlapping UVs unless it's necessary, and this is the times when it's necessary. You know, when you have a model, you know it's going to have the same UVs, the same texture forward and back. You can overlay the UVs and it would duplicate the texture on this side to this side here, because I'm using physically based rendering, and it's just going to have a red texture, metal texture. It's going to have no decals, and any decal I will have will be in its own separate polygon using, you know, a pond shape technique. It wouldn't matter to have this, which means it will increase texture space and resolution, increasing it. So it's a good handy technique to use here. So I think I'll end this here. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the model doing UV mapping, because that's going to be boring, because it's the same technique. You're basically going to do the same for here, just like you did on the base, and then cut it up, cut it along this line here, you know, cut it along here, pre-cut it, then you unwrap the UVs just like I did on the base here. And because I'm going to recut it just like I did on the base, no point you seeing the same thing again on here or on these objects. So tomorrow when I'm do the next tutorial, all this will be UV mapped already. It's going to be ready UV mapped, and I'm going to show you another technique, a technique that I found that I created, you know, that I made, that I worked at for myself, you know, self-researching, that I found it's quite useful, especially with Substance Designer, and that is creating color ID maps. Color ID maps is very useful, especially in Substance Designer. So thank you for watching me today, and hope you enjoyed today's session. And join me again in the next tutorial.